Section 12 of Völsungasaga. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Völsungasaga by Anonymous. Translated by Erika Magnusson and William Morris. Section 12, Chapter 39. Now thought Atli the king that he had gained a mighty victory, and spake to Gudrun even as mocking her greatly, or as making himself great before her. Gudrun, saith he, thus hast thou lost thy brethren, and thy very self hast brought it about. She answers, In good liking livest thou, whereas thou thrustest these slayings before me. But mayhappen thou wilt rue it when thou hast tried what is to come hereafter, and of all I have, the longest lived matter shall be the memory of thy cruel heart, nor shall it go well with thee whiles I live. He answered and said, Let there be peace betwixt us. I will atone for thy brethren with gold and dear-bought things, even as thy heart may wish. She answers, Hard for a long while have I been in our dealings together, and now I say that while Hogni was yet alive thou mightest have brought it to pass, but now mayest thou never atone for my brethren in my heart. Yet oft must we women be overborne by the might of you men, and now are all my kindred dead and gone, and thou alone art left to rule over me. Wherefore now this is my counsel, that we make a great feast, wherein I will hold the funeral of my brother and of thy kindred withal. In such wise did she make herself soft and kind in words, though far other things forsooth lay thereunder. But he hearkened to her gladly, and trusted in her words, whereas she made herself sweet of speech. So Gudrun held the funeral feast for her brethren, and King Atli for his men, and exceeding proud and great was this feast. But Gudrun forgat not her woe, but brooded over it, how she might work some mighty shame against the king. And at nightfall she took to her the sons of King Atli and her, as they played about the floor. The younglings waxed heavy of cheer, and asked what she would with them. Ask me not, she said, ye shall die, the twain of you. Then they answered, Thou mayest do with thy children even as thou wilt, nor shall any hinder thee, but shame there is to thee in the doing of this deed. Yet for all that she cut the throats of them. Then the king asked where his sons were, and Gudrun answered, I will tell thee, and gladden thine heart by the telling. Lo now, thou didst make a great woe spring up for me in the slaying of my brethren. Now hearken and hear my rede and my deed. Thou hast lost thy sons, and their heads are become beakers on the board here. And thou thyself hast drunken the blood of them blended with wine. And their hearts I took, and roasted them on a spit, and thou hast eaten thereof. King Atli answered, Grim art thou, in that thou hast murdered thy sons, and given me their flesh to eat, and little space passes betwixt ill deed of thine and ill deed. Gudrun said, My heart is set on the doing to thee of as great shame as may be. Never shall the measure of ill be full to such a king as thou art. The king said, Worser deeds hast thou done than men have to tell of, and great unwisdom is there in such fearful reeds. Most meet art thou to be burned on bale when thou hast first been smitten to death with stones, for in such wise wouldst thou have what thou hast gone a weary way to seek. She answered, Thine own death thou foretellest, but another death is fated for me. And many other words they spake in their wrath. Now Hogni had a son left alive, hight Niflung, and great wrath of heart he bare against King Atli. And he did Gudrun to wit that he would avenge his father, and she took his words well, and they fell to counsel together thereover. And she said it would be great good hap if it might be brought about. So on a night when the king had drunken, he gat him to bed. And when he was laid asleep, thither to him came Gudrun and the son of Hogni. Gudrun took a sword, and thrust it through the breast of King Atli, and they both of them set their hands to the deed, both she and the son of Hogni. Then Atli the king awoke with the wound, and cried out, "No need of binding or salving here! Who art thou, who hast done the deed?" Gudrun says, "Somewhat have I, Gudrun, wrought therein, and somewhat withal the son of Hogni." Atli said, "Ill it beseemed to thee to do this, though somewhat of wrong was between us. For thou wert wedded to me by the rede of thy kin, and dower paid I for thee, yea, 30 goodly knights, and seemly maidens, and many men besides. And yet wert thou not content, but if thou shouldest rule over the lands King Buthli owned, and thy mother-in-law full oft thou lettest sit a-weeping." Gudrun said, "Many false words hast thou spoken, and of naught I account them. Oft indeed was I fell of mood, but much didst thou add thereto. Full oft in this thy house did frays befall, and kin fought kin, and friend fought friend, and made themselves big one against the other. Better days had I, when as I abode with Sigurd, when we slew kings, and took their wealth to us, but gave peace to whomso would. And the great men laid themselves under our hands, and might we gave to him of them who would have it. Then I lost him, and a little thing was it that I should bear a widow's name, but the greatest of griefs that I should come to thee, I who had aforetime the noblest of all kings, while for thee thou never barest out of the battle aught but the worser lot." King Atli answered, "Naught true are thy words, nor will this our speech better the lot of either of us, for all is fallen now to naught. But now do to me in seemly wise, and array my dead corpse in noble fashion." "Yea, that will I," she says, "and let make for thee a goodly grave, and build for thee a worthy abiding place of stone, and wrap thee in fair linen, and care for all that needful is." So therewithal he died, and she did according to her word, and then they cast fire into the hall. And when the folk and men of estate awoke amid that dread and trouble, naught would they abide the fire, but smote each the other down, and died in such wise. So there Atli the king and all his folk ended their life days. But Gudrun had no will to live longer, after this deed so wrought, but nevertheless her ending day was not yet come upon her. Now the Volsungs and the Xxxix, as folk tell in tale, have been the greatest hearted and the mightiest of all men, as ye may well behold written in the songs of old time. But now, with the tidings just told, were these troubles stayed. Chapter 40. Gudrun had a daughter by Sigurd, hight Svanhild. She was the fairest of all women, eager-eyed as her father, so that few durst look unto the brows of her, and as far did she excel other womankind as the sun excels the other lights of heaven. But on a day went Gudrun down to the sea, and caught up stones in her arms, and went out into the sea, for she had will to end her life. But mighty billows drave her forth along the sea, and by means of their upholding was she borne along, till she came at the last to the burg of King Jonakr, a mighty king, and lord of many folk. And he took Gudrun to wife. And their children were Hamdir, and Surli, and Erp. And there was Svanhild nourished withal. Chapter 41. Jormunrek was the name of a mighty king of those days, and his son was called Randver. Now this king called his son to talk with him, and said, "Thou shalt fare on an errand of mine to King Jonakr, with my counsellor